All right, guys. Welcome back. We have our next speaker now. You can move everyone over to the room. We have the next speaker now, Hugo Rodrigues, amazing developer. I'll give you a little bit about his background. So he's actually a full-stack developer and a UX designer. So he's two in one. And he's a minimal solutions lover. So he loves doing the minimum necessary to just sort of prove or disprove a hypothesis. So very lean startup style approach to development. And he loves to use the keep it simple principle, KISS principle, keep it simple, stupid, for whenever he's developing. And he always avoids using tools and technologies that add unnecessary complexity or multiple layers of abstraction. I've known Hugo now for about 6 months. I can say with confidence that he's an incredible superstar unicorn developer, and we're lucky to have him here today. So Hugo, we can't wait to hear what you talk about today. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself, but take it away whenever you're ready.
Okay. So thank you for introduction, Ed. I think the smartest thing that I can do now is shut up, don't say any word, because I'm going to ruin everything that you say about me. So let me share the presentation. Today we're going to do some presentation. Okay, it's loading now. Okay. Okay, so hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for coming in. Today we're going to talk about hybrid HTML5 applications. This methodology that we are going to see here, this can be applied to mobile applications, but also for desktop applications. You can use it to build anything you want. So I'm Hugo. I'm a full-stack developer from Portugal. You can normally find me on Hackathons giving sessions on PHP, JavaScript, Node, mobile, and Angular. Here you have some of my contacts. You can ping me if you need something. Before we start, I want to say this reflects my own opinion about how you should build your apps. I have used some different names and terms because I found that is easier for some people to understand. And sometimes I start talking very fast. Sorry about that. I can't control that. Anyway, the slides will be available for download on Hackathons blog, and I really hope you enjoyed this session. So what are hybrid mobile or desktop HTML5 applications? Before you look at the slide, I'm going to say you just, like, when you are doing something in the browser, because HTML are made for the browser, and when you try to do something that the browser doesn't allow you to, or is not available on the browser, maybe it's time to go hybrid and try to do it in another way. And I normally see a lot of confusion about, okay, this is an HTML app, what's the difference about an hybrid app? Are you using the file API, but the HTML spec already has a file system API? So again, if the browser can do it, you need to go hybrid. So you can use the native operating system APIs to do anything you want. Again, HTML5 app runs inside of a browser, and an hybrid HTML5 runs inside of a native app. You can think like it's like a small iframe right inside of a native app that is running your code. This is basically how they work. So here we have some examples of situations that require you to go hybrid. So if you're doing a mobile app, you need to go hybrid when you basically want to direct hardware access to the device. So if you want to use camera, GPS, the vibration plugin, other native plugins, you need to go hybrid. Sometimes for some APIs, you can say that, oh, but I can use that already in the browser. But the point is, normally you can do it across all the entire browsers that exist on the mobile market. The same happens for the desktop. Sometimes you want your app to be able to interact with the system or make shell commands, or use the entire modules of NPM that will help you to build great apps. That case, you need to go hybrid. But again, your code will be just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That's what makes hybrid awesome. Hybrid HTMLs are really easy to build. So they are simple. Everybody already know how to code HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. So it's very easy to dump a lot of plugins on your app. It's easy to build. Everybody can do it. But it's tricky. It's really tricky to do it right. Mainly because there are hundreds of different devices. And all of these devices have different resolutions. They have different processing power. And they have different hardware features, and the list goes on. There are a lot of difference in all of these devices. So in order to be effective when you build your app, we really need to understand how it works. If we understand how it works, we will be able to avoid the common pitfalls of this methodology of doing hybrid apps. The main points are like performance issues, confusion about the stack, the separation of concerns of your business, like this belongs to the user interface and this belongs to the business logic of the app. The other part of the code should be abstracted so it can be reusable in the browser, for example. So you can really make, if you understand how it works, you can really make a great code base that has the basic functionality running on the different platforms that support HTML5. This can be a mobile device, this can be a browser, a desktop browser, that can be a smart TV that has the HTML5 capability, it can be a desktop application, and you can just make small drivers to abstract all of that devices. There are some patterns that will help you. So how we get started with it? So if you search for solutions to this problem, there are millions of pages on Google with different dates. So you will get a lot of information. Most of them are completely outdated, but we will find different vendors, different solutions, different tutorials and blog posts to do it. But when you drill down all that information, you will come up with some vendors. So there are ones that are more famous than others, but this market is really rich in diversity of some solutions that will allow you to make this kind of apps. So one thing that we will find out is like almost every single one will say to you, okay, this is the holy grail of HTML5 development. We have a complete solution for your problem. Just install and start doing HTML5 applications now. And that statement is based on the assumption that they normally mix a lot of different stages of your app. Stages like building, stages like compiling, stages like deployment, stages like updating the applications, the user interface itself, the CSS and the JavaScript that powers what the users see, the business logic behind your application. Some of them also provides a server side for your application. The list goes on. They mix everything, and you will end up, in my opinion, with a black box without knowing what your app is doing, or at least how it's connecting the dots together. But there's all of them have a mixing point, because all of them all of them use Cordova to do their stuff. So Cordova is the core of all the mobile all the mobile HTML5 applications. It's the base of everything. So again, as you already know, all of them depend on Cordova to do its business logic. So what is Cordova? Cordova is like, well, before talking about Cordova, a little bit of history. This HTML5 for mobile apps revolution started with PhoneGap. They started everything. And then they got acquired by Adobe, and they moved the core of their product of PhoneGap to the Apache Foundation, and it have several names between, but now it calls Apache Cordova, and it's like I really like to call it the abstraction layer, because it's like the glue that connects all the dots in your app. And it's also a standalone application, so you can use it without any other tool. Okay, if you are a really purist guy, you can just download Cordova and get like the cleanest solution ever, because this is like the base of any HTML5 application using hybrid HTML. And it's also extendable by plugins. And plugins are a lot of plugins that will allow you to extend your application. All the functionality you will have regarding the operating system, so everything that is outside of what HTML5 gives you is extendable by a plugin. So if you want to access, for example, the camera, so your app, so the user of your app can take a picture with your app, you will need to load the camera module. And this module will be responsible of communicating with the operating system and make the bridge to your application. We will see that in a moment in more detail. So, but before we go in like that explanation, I'm just going to show you how a plugin looks like. So this is an example of using the camera module to take a picture. This is just using the device camera to take a picture and inject it inside an image HTML element. It gets the picture as a buffer, and it injects in an image. And all of the code of the plugins are fully asynchronous. So that's why you have these callbacks, because you have to wait the hardware to be ready, and you have to wait the data to come by. This is not new for any JavaScript developer. And you can check the docs for more examples of how to take pictures, because there are at least two main points in getting pictures. You can get a picture directly from the camera, or you can get your picture from the user album folder. Yeah, so we really need to understand how the mobile stack works, because before we go deep, we need to figure it out how the stack is built. So you can, when you face hard problems, because you will face it, sometimes you face hard problems, you don't know what's going on with your app, because it's running on a device, right? So you have to debug it, and it's hard, and you really need to understand how the stack works. So let's see how the native stack works. We always start with the operating system. The operating system, it can be iOS, it can be Android, or it can be Windows Phone, depending on the device that is using your app. And then the operating system exposes APIs for your apps to use. Normally, this is done by the SDK. These APIs can be, as we've seen before, a module to interact with the camera, a module to interact with the file system, to the GPS module, or to play media on the device. this is interesting. Like you are looking at the media and you say, okay, but HTML5 is already capable of playing music and play videos. Why do I need something from the operative system? Well, this is like, I think everybody already know that if you play music on the browser and your browser goes, your device goes to sleep or to the lock, the music will stop after a few minutes. So if you want to build like a media app that you want to play music, regardless of the user being on your app or not, you have to use the media, because it's like an API that the phone gives you, so you can play media in background, for example. That's why sometimes you need to go native. And then it's your app. If it's a native app, you will probably write it on Java. If you are on Android, Objective-C or Swift, or if you are on iOS. But basically, this is the stack of a native application: the operative system, the APIs, and your app. In the other side, you have the hybrid HTML stack. But again, we start with the operative system, same as native. Then the operative system exposes the API, again, same as the native one. And here we start the abstraction. So the first thing that is loaded is the Cordova bridge. Cordova is our abstraction layer. You can see this as a native app, but their main function is just to abstract the API and to load your code on top of it, as you're going to see in the next slides. But Cordova, its bridge, its abstraction layer, you can think of it as the main native app that is running on the phone. Everything on top of it are being abstracted. Now that Cordova is running, Cordova will expose a new abstracted JavaScript API with all the functionality your app will need. You can see at the bottom the native API, and on the top the JavaScript API. So this is getting translated. So Cordova Bridge is like proxying one API. In case this is the Android SDK, it will plug the JavaScript API to the Android API. And this bridge, all of this is extendable by plugins. So you can use, if a new phone comes with a new functionality, Cordova or anyone can create new plugins that will connect and make this bridge. There are also some plugins that are exclusively for some operative systems, like you can get one plugin that only works on iOS because only iOS has that functionality. So you have to choose the plugin that you want to use. And then on top of it, you have the rendering layer. The rendering layer is just a browser. You can imagine as an iframe that will run your application. And this rendering engine will change regarding of the underlying operative system. As you can see on the green layer, it can be Chrome, Safari, or WebKit. This depends on the underlying operative system. So basically, the rendering layer will use the default browser of the operative system that your app is running. This is very important because as you are used to in regular HTML5 applications on the browser, you have to be really careful about the some browser difference when you rendering CSS. The same happens here. So it's really important to be aware that the rendering engine that will build the interface can change regarding of the version of the operative system that is running. So if you are using if your app is being loaded on a really old Android version, it will load old WebKit engine that doesn't have the more recent like CSS3 selectors, for example. So you really need to understand this when you're building your application. And on top of it, it's like your HTML5 application. This is like your comfort zone. This is basically HTML5, CSS3, and JavaScript. And it's like a regular app, like you do it for the browser. And you know that you have some special APIs that will connect to the operating system. So let's compare both stacks side by side. As you can see, the HTML5 has 3 more layers than the native one. They are responsible for the abstraction that will allow our code base to run everywhere. So here you have like the web view, the green, the plugins, and the Cordova application. It's like the layer that makes the abstraction work. Yeah, it's this. So if you see your HTML app, the same code base will run everywhere because of this kind of architecture. But as you can see, it's important to notice, like in the first column, you have a Nexus phone. The operating system, it's Android. So if you check the green layer, the rendering layer, you will see that is Chrome or WebKit that is being used. I say Chrome or WebKit because in previous version, like previous than 404, Cordova will use WebKit, the native WebKit, as a rendering engine. But in the latest version of Android, the default browser is Chrome, so it has more features. But this can be tricky because sometimes you are developing using a recent phone that is running the recent Android, and you get some CSS functionality or HTML5 functionality that you can get on the regular WebKit browser. Okay, and in the iPhone, in the middle column, the operating system is iOS, and the rendering layer, of course, is Safari, the default browser. And for example, on a Lumia phone, a Windows phone, the rendering layer is, of course, Internet Explorer, and you know how it works. Okay, so now that you know that Cordova does all the abstraction part, all the heavy lifting for you, what are really all the other projects doing? They have to exist for a purpose, right? So this was like one of the points that keeps me away from some projects because they try to abstract everything for me, and I don't like black boxes. I really like to know exactly what's going on when you're building an application. But of course, they all provide extra tools for you and provide a lot of value. But you really need to understand what they are giving you. Some will give you extra tools like console tools that will help you to build your application faster. Others will give you complete IDEs with what you see is what you get tools, so you can drag and drop controllers and the aspect of your application. Others will give you also a mobile user interface framework to build your interface. Others will give you cloud building, so you can compile your application without having all the SDKs that you are targeting. For example, if you use this functionality, you can test and build your iOS application, even if you are developing it on Linux or Windows machine. So this can be really awesome. Some of them also provide continuous integration and deployment of your application to your users, auto submission to the different app stores that you are targeting, and some of them provide custom Cordova plugins to enrich the experience. I really recommend you to check them and see what's the best tool for your case, because every app has a purpose, and maybe there are some vendors that are more focused on solve different problems. So I really recommend you to check them. Well, as you can probably see by now that you are more familiar with this ecosystem of HTML5 applications, if you are like me, you are saying, I see a lot of moving parts everywhere. And that's true. That's true, because all of these abstraction layers will make you think like, will my app be slow? Well, sometimes it can get slower than a native app, of course. All of this abstraction has a price. That's why I try to keep abstractions away and try to understand what's going on so we can take all of these moving pieces apart. So, but it's really about the performance. It really depends on the type of application that you are building. I would say for the most cases, if you're doing it right, it will be okay. But there are, in fact, some kind of application that, let's say, if you have an application that has, you want to build a very rich user experiencing, when you are always messing with video and audio, and the interface has a lot of interaction, like an iPad application, maybe HTML is not the right solution. But even in this field of performance, there are really a lot of things that you can do to avoid your app being slow. You can also mix native components in the middle of your HTML application. If you check for some tutorials, I think 37 Signals from the Basecamp has released a great tutorial about that, in mixing native components right inside of your HTML5 application. If you really need performance for some controllers, I definitely recommend you to check that tutorial. Other assumption is like hybrid HTML suck because they have ugly user interface and bad user experience. Again, it's HTML, right? So you can build great user interface or bad user interface. Sometimes you see apps that are done just by developers and they don't look good and have a bad user experience. But this is not, I don't think this is like an HTML5 problem. This is like a developer problem. Of course, if you use the native applications, the IDE will force you to build your application in a certain way. So it will be more pleasant to see, even if it's designed by a developer. Okay, so yeah, but you have one thing that it's great, because since this is HTML5, you have the freedom to do anything you want, and in a very productive way. It's very easy to come up with great solutions, and if you go native, you'll have a hard time to jump outside of the box of the native IDE gives you. So as you can probably see, it's all about user interface. The problem with HTML5 applications that we will find, it's 99% about the user interface. I never faced like a problem of business logic in my HTML5 applications. I think JavaScript is fast enough to most of operations. I always find problems in the user interface. The user interface, the performance, the usability are like the top problems that you find on most HTML5 applications. So it's very important. It's very important you choose a good user interface framework to abstract all this complexity and help you to succeed in your application. Again, when you search for popular user interface frameworks, you will see that there are many candidates to do that. I really recommend you to check them and test the demos, not on the browser, but on a mobile device. So if you want to evaluate, let's say, jQuery mobile, launch and test their demos on the real mobile device and not on your desktop browser, because all of them you can pick anything you want. If you test it on a desktop, they will always look great. But when you go to the mobile device, you will see that some will perform really better than the others. So this is my first tip when you choose. Oops. Sorry, guys. Okay. So always test on mobile to check the performance. So what, in my opinion, makes a great user interface framework? As you all probably know, the performance is king. Performance should always be your one of decisive factors when evaluating a framework, because all of your user experience will depend on this. The user experience, the user interface will suffer if the performance is not great. Then you have the look and feel of the framework. The native look and feel is something that you really need to find, because this will also help the user experience, because users are already familiar with user interface patterns that the operative system that they use make them use for other applications. So they are used to see a button with a style. So if you put a button with a different style, and that execution is not really well, the application will look ugly. And we need to try to not reinvent the wheel in terms of user interface. So use the tools and use the patterns that your users already know. So, okay, next, find a framework that gives you a great usability, both for user and developers. This will be important because your users should be able, you want to make sure that they can really use and navigate in your application. And for the developers, you want them to make these interfaces in an easy and semantic way. This is also important because you need to build apps faster. And then you have to make sure that this framework allow you to make user interfaces via single-page applications. This is like a requirement because you don't want to refresh between interfaces. This is key for performance and user experience. Single-page applications all the way. And next, you have to have this framework will have to allow you to get a large number of user interface components and widgets, because this is you will need to use them anyway. So you need to. It's good if the framework already gives you everything that you want, like slide menus, like tabs, like buttons, like forms, grids. The list goes on. You really need components, so your app will look exactly the same on different devices, and all of these components look the same. And again, you should check them always on a real device when you're trying to the widgets from jQuery Mobile or from the Ionic. Test them on a real device because they look very different. And next, you have to be sure that the framework that you'll be using has been tested on multiple devices, because that's the foundation that you will be building your app. So Cordova abstracts you the operative system and the plugins, but it's the role of this mobile user interface framework to abstract the visual part of it. So this is very important because we will find out that is different resolutions, different browser, different rendering capabilities, different hardware interaction. For example, in iOS, the main way to go back in an application is to click a button. But in Android, you have a physical button to go back, so it's important that your framework already have solutions to this problem, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel or break the user experience. It's really a bad thing that your user is on Android trying to go back and click the hardware button and nothing happens. That's bad. So again, this is like the keys for choosing a great mobile user interface framework. Ionic. I choose Ionic to do that. I'm a big fan of Ionic, mainly because this framework has really fixed some problems I was having regarding user interface on mobile devices. And it's very, very well structured, and I really recommend you to check them out. You can also use this framework to build apps for the web. It just works without any issue. And it has a great user experience and a great set of components. So in fact, I was so in love with Ionic that Ionic made me learn Angular. So today I know Angular because I always wanted to use this framework, and I have to learn Angular to use it. It's awesome. So it has a great documentation. It has a great set of JavaScript components. It also has a great set of CSS components. It's built on Angular, which turns out to be a great solution for this problem because it has all the things that I talked before, like the single-page application and all of those things. It's awesome. They also have a project, but you can use this project outside of Ionic. It's like ng Cordova. This is like a library that will bind all of your Cordova plugins that we've seen before in a nice Angular service. So you can do all your code using Angular. You don't have to touch plain JavaScript, which is awesome because it really improves the code base that you're doing. So as we've seen before, there are some key points to build great apps. The first thing you have to be sure it's like to understand how it works. This will avoid you common pitfalls. Know that everything is Cordova. This was like I was passing some time till I figured this out because, okay, I'm using PhoneGap, but I keep seeing Cordova and I see Cordova plugins and I say, okay, this is not for me because I want PhoneGap plugins. So the first thing you need to realize is everything is Cordova. If you are using like Intel SysDK, you can use a Cordova plugin and it will work. Okay, so this is awesome. Again, you need to understand that all the functionality are provided by plugins that you can connect to Cordova, and you can write your own if you don't find any working for your situation. And finally, choose a great user interface framework. This is like the best thing you can do. You can study all of the possibilities like in a week. Take your time, make a great decision because this is like the key factor for your success. Okay, so there you go, the points to build great apps. Okay, so till now I just talked about some things that you should know about how to build great apps, but I haven't shown you the code, so that's what I'm going to show you now. So before you start developing applications, you need to install the SDK for the target that you are trying to make your app to run. So if you want to target Android, you have to install the Android SDK. If you want to target iOS, you need to install the Xcode, and everything will be okay. And of course, if you want to target Windows, you need to install the SDK for Windows. So before you start, make sure that you have the SDK installed on your operating system. Next, you will need to install Node.js. You can install it from their site, or use Brew or apt-get if you're on Linux. Node is an hard dependency, mainly because you will need npm to install a lot of modules that will be used by Cordova and Ionic. So make sure you also have Node installed. Next, of course, you will need to install Cordova. You install Cordova and Ionic using npm. This is like the recommendation. You need to install them with the G option, so it will install everywhere as a global dependency of your system. And after you have everything installed, you got everything you need. So all the dependencies have been installed. You can now start developing your application. So let's take a look about the common development workflow. You start by scaffolding your application, initializing the code base that we will be using. Then you code, you make your great app, and then you need to run it to see how it runs, to test different functionality, and sometimes you need to debug it. This is like the 4 steps when you build an application. Again, scaffolding is basically you do it at the beginning of the project. This will involve creating files, install dependencies, etc. Coding is the fun part. You can use whatever editor you want. You don't need to use any IDE specific for the SDK. It's just HTML5, CSS, and JavaScript, so you can code literally using the tool that you want. And the running process, again, this is key for your productivity. You have to figure it out a great way to run your applications faster, so you can make a change and see them immediately. And then you have the debugging stage. So sometimes your code doesn't run, or sometimes you have some problem, and this can be tricky. You really need to understand the stacks and all the pieces involved so you can debug it correctly. Okay, let's see them in detail. So to scaffolding your application, you just run Ionic start a name for your application, in this case, my app, and you can start with a template. In this case, we are starting with a tabs template. This will create a new Ionic powered Cordova app for you. And basically you will have everything you need to start coding. But before you start coding, you need to specify the platforms that you want to target. So in this case, we are targeting iOS and Android. You do this by Ionic platform add and the platform that you want to do. You have to run this inside of your project folder. And you can add more platforms at any point in time. Then you can install the plugins. So here we are installing the camera plugin. And as you can see, the plugin has been installed for Android and iOS version. And you can find a lot of plugins there. And again, you can add more plugins at any point in time if your app needs them. And when you finish your scaffolding, you will have a file structure like this. So basically, you have one folder for every platform that you have targets. And and when you add new platforms, they will create a new folder here automatically for you. The same goes with the plugins, one folder for every installed plugin. And then this folder here is like where your code will be stored. So Ionic has already gives us all the dependencies that you need to start hacking. And basically, this is a common structure for Angular apps, where you'll find the router, views, and controllers, and all of those components that make Angular. And a recommendation is like, apart from some configuration files that you'll find on the root of the project, you should not make changes outside of this folder. So all of the other folders, you should not touch them. Really bad things can happen if you do that. Okay, so we have seen about the structure and how to start doing our code. How about run the applications? We need to run them to check on real devices, to check how it's being done. So you can use an emulator to do it. If you do Ionic emulate iOS, it will launch the emulator provided by the SDK that you are using. So in this case, it will load the iPhone preview. So it will load a native app, and your app will run inside of it. And if you emulate on Android, the same will happen with the Android emulation program. Sometimes emulators are very slow, especially the Android one. I don't know why they are so slow. But this I normally don't use an emulator to do it because of they tend to be slow, and sometimes some features that are not presented on the emulator. You can also run it on a real device. So you can Ionic run iOS. This will find any iOS device that is connected to your machine. You normally need to activate the developer mode on the device. So this operation is specific to the iOS. And you normally have to connect your device with a USB cable, and Cordova will find your device and inject the application there. So you have your device on developer mode, you have the USB cable connected, you run Ionic run iOS, and your application will just show up on the screen, and you can try it. But this process is like 30 seconds to build and to push to the device. Other option that you have is try your application on a desktop browser. You do Ionic serve, and this will run your app in your default browser. This is awesome because this is the part where HTML5 starts to help you in your development workflow, because it's very easy to do apps on the browser. This is where you should spend the most of your time debugging your app. You really need to focus your code base so you can try to test all of these functionalities inside of your browser. This will really improve your performance and the time that you take to build your app. This command will also live update when you make changes on your code. The changes will just show up in the browser. It has the live update functionality also. And it's awesome to inspect your HTML and see why that button is not on the right spot. That kind of debug that you already do in regular apps. So when you come to the debugging part of it, you normally debug when the app is running outside of your control. So if the app is running on a device you don't have to how connected, you don't know the output of the application, sometimes this can also be tricky. If you're on Android, you can use the logcat command, and if you use the first command, it will output everything that is like debugging on the Android. It's not very helpful because it's a lot of data. But in the second command, you can output only the log related to the running Cordova application. So we will only see output from your application. So for example, in your code base, if you have like an instruction like console.log, it will show up in your console. So this is very good to check the JavaScript errors and to get some JavaScript output out of your application. On Android, you can also use the native Chrome inspect to hook your device in. This will only work if you're using Android 404. You can just Chrome inspect and select the device, and your inspector, your developer inspector, will jump to the device, and this is awesome. But for previous version, you have to use a plugin. You can check that. It's not free, but they have a free version of it. But it really can help you when you don't know what's going on your application. It's awesome. On iOS, it can be simpler. You just need to activate the Safari developer debug menu. You can do it using the GUI or to run this command on your console. And after that, you select the simulator, and you connect to you choose a connected device, and you start debugging, also using the native Safari developer toolkit. So basically, this is how you debug your application inside of your HTML5 applications. So this is it. I don't know if you guys have some questions for me. I was really focused on just seeing the presentation. I was not looking at the Hangout session. Let me just check how it goes.
Great, Hugo. Great job. Very, very educational. So I'm not sure if you can see the Hangout, the Crowdcast questions. I can help moderate that for you if it's easier. Do you see them on the right?
Let me open that. I have closed that stuff. Okay. Loading now.
So audience members, please feel free to aggressively ask questions that you think are interesting for Hugo. We'd love to hear what you have to think.
Yes, okay, I'm seeing it now. Hey guys. Okay, questions. Okay, I see some here. So what are the best practice when a project is built? So what do you mean by built? I really don't get this question. When you're scaffolding, or when you're trying to deploy the project and compile the project and to submit to the App Store? Is that the question?
I think maybe you should just answer the question that you think he's asking there, Hugo.
Okay, so I'll move to the camera. Great point. Let me connect. Stop the screen. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to answer what I haven't put on the slides. Well, one step that I haven't put on the slides is how you're going to ship your application to the app stores. When you are ready to ship your application, you have to comply with some rules of the App Store, especially on Apple. They are very restrictive about especially the user interfaces or some APIs that you can use. they allow you to use Cordova, no problem at all. But my recommendation is like to read their guidelines about the user interface, and just compile their application and send them. They will review it for you, and that part of shipping the application can take some time, because you have to create some certificates, you have to sign your application, and then you send them to Apple and or to Google Play. Google Play, it's very easy to publish your application, but basically both do a great job for it. But Cordova has some commands to do it. You just build it and you'll get the final APK or the final app for iOS. Basically, the process is that. But that process will give you it's subject for another talk, just to discuss that. So Fernando Rocha asked when to go native is a better option. I think going native it's a better option if you have resources, because if you don't have resources, it will be really hard to go native, because you have to have a team just for iOS and your other team just for Android. That can be quite expensive, and of course, as I say, there are some kind of application that really need to you really need to go native, because of performance issue. If you're going to build a game, you have to be native. If you're going to build a user interface that is very rich, you also need to go native. Basically, it's my opinion about going to one path or another. Okay, we have another. What's your preferred tools for hybrid development? Well, about my tools, I already say that I'm a big fan of Ionic. About the tooling that I use Sublime to smash my code. So it's not anything that you don't need any special tools to build this kind of hybrid applications. I don't know if that answered the question. Okay, so Geraldo is asking, what's the main reason why Magic can be a bad thing for frameworks? Magic is awesome until it fails. Okay, this is true for everything. I really don't like when a framework it's doing a lot of work for me, and then the framework always getting on my, it's always getting on my front and doesn't allow me to easily accomplish my goal. So the Magic frameworks tend to, in a certain point in time, to hold you back, and that's why I don't like Magic in code. Let's see another question. Okay, so you mentioned you use Ionic for the user interface side. What about the server side? Well, this is really depends on the kind of data that you want to process on the server. Normally, I use Node.js for building APIs, but this is interesting, because this is regarding of the technology that you are going to use on the backend. I think the best way to do it is like the separation of concerns. This is a client. Your website can also be a client, so it's really important that you isolate your server to be like a REST framework, just JSON REST framework. So you just exchange data from the clients to this API. you should not render anything on the server. Just use the server as a repository and put on the server the crucial business logic of your application and the persistency. Yeah, but that you can accomplish with any kind of technology that you want to run on the server side. Just don't mix both technologies. Make the decision of have isolated clients and isolated servers, because if you have a great, it will be easier for you to scale your application. It will be easier for you to debug, and it will be easier for you to come up with a different client for your server. So you can have like a desktop application that also use the same API on the backend, and a mobile application that also consumes that API. Okay, so another question. I'm new to programming and I'm in the production of 2 websites. How do I get the correct terms and conditions to comply with legal rules? And well, I'm not a lawyer. I really don't know how to answer this question. I don't know if anyone on the audience can help this user. I really don't know. Okay, so I think I've answered all the questions. I don't know if anyone has others.
All right, Hugo, I got some questions for you.
Okay.
I'm going to ask the question I asked the previous speaker, which is the wild and crazy question, of course, that you must be asked, which is, what are you doing when you're not programming? What are your hobbies? What is it like in Hugo's life?
Most of the times I'm reading about new technologies.
Yeah.
And I do this. Of course, I have my hobbies. I really like to hang out with my girl. I really like to travel. But on a daily basis, sometimes I go to the bed like 5 a.m. in the morning, and I can't sleep. I have to read Hacker News first and other news, and I spend like 1 hour before I go to bed to read. Even if I'm full of tired and can see code in front of me.
Yeah, that happens.
Will check out the news.
I woke up at like 2, 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes. Why do you think that happens?
Sorry, I don't understand the question.
Why do you think that happens? Why do you think you're waking up in the middle of the night?
Well, programming is something that it's something that doesn't leave your head. Okay, so we pass a lot of hours thinking about problems, and the problems don't go away. So I think your brain is always thinking on them, and you are always I don't know. I think this is like a problem with this profession. I really love it.
Well, great, Hugo. Thank you so much for your time today. We're just about out of time here. If any of you guys want to chat with Hugo, I'm going to post here in the chat area his Google Hangout, and you can join the Google Hangout and chat with Hugo as soon as we're done broadcasting. I'll post it right here. And then if any of you guys are shy and kind of wanted to talk to him one-on-one off the air, then you'll have the opportunity to do that. So we'll start the next session in just a few minutes here. Hugo, I want to thank you so much for your time.
Awesome, my pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay, take care.
And thanks for the invitation, by the way.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.